All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone right now. As we go along, and if you have a question, um, then please do, unmute yourself during the conversation. Before we get to that, let's begin with Namaskar and good evening. Welcome to ICA's Forum. And it's so good to see so many of you this time. I tend to have small audience, but I'm very happy to see a larger group of people joining today. My name is Namita Maunder, and I am the ICA marketing chair right now. And I work with a wonderful group of uh, working board members who are here today. Our president, Prakash Agarwal, VP Reshma Nigam is here. Sorry if I miss who else. I can see Abhay, who is joined too, Jaya, our treasurer. And it's just how my screen, if I'm missing anybody, please welcome everybody. So the board has also joined. Many members of the board are here. And then, today's topic is very near and dear for me as I get to have this wonderful conversation. This is my second time having a conversation with Dr. Pramath Raj Sinha. And I'm super excited because we wear some similarities, and it's always nice when you have those similarities. So, first of all, we both are from Bihar. So, that is one common thing. And that's why many of my family members are here today, which is a very small place in India, in the Northeast. So, for those of my friends who don't know, it's a small place, very much a rural area in India still. And I'm so excited that Dr. Sinha has that origin and has been doing so much work is in Bihar and outside Bihar to get uh, to uplift the educational system and many other things that he'll talk about today. The other thing is, of course, I'm also a special educator and have been in the field of education for all my life. And it is such a wonderful opportunity to meet a powerhouse of educator. So he is definitely a powerhouse. If you heard my conversation with him in April, you would have heard multiple institutes that he's involved as a founding member. To name a few, the Indian School of Business, Ashoka University, and Harappa School, and the Vevika uh, scholarship program. There is also, a lot more, not just in India, but beyond. And please do listen to that interview where he has shared a lot more details about it. Couple of housekeeping for today, that we will have a conversation in the beginning I'm looking at the time and it is around 8:36. So we will kind of have this 15 minutes of conversation, and then I will uh, stop my part of talking and request Dr. Sinha to then take questions from the audience. We have a wonderful group of educators here today, and people who are passionate about working in India and sharing their contributions. So this will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. Again, apart from everything else that if you heard his last interview where he shares about his journey of making these institutes, journey of entrepreneurship, and of course the number of books that he has written. Also, we talked a little bit about it today. I want to take this opportunity to take a little bit more deeper dive into one of them. Study, don't learn, and don't study but learn. So we'll get to that in a bit also. My focus today is to, with ICA, we always work with those who are underprivileged in India. So we also want to ask Dr. Sinha today about some of those work that he's doing in India with his foundation and educational system work in working with those marginalized population, and how is that work impacting their lives. So with that, let me open it for Dr. Sinha. And if you can unmute yourself, Dr. Sinha, and let's talk about the work that you're doing and how it will impact the lives there. But before that, and since I just saw Abhay and a few more people from IIT Kanpur, big shout out to Dr. Sinha and all the people who are here who feel this extra relationship of big, being connected with him as a distinguished alumni from IIT Kanpur. So there's so much to share in his history that I leave it for the recording, for you to watch the recording. So welcome again, Dr. Sinha. And if you can
Thank
highlight
you.
your work, that would be great.
Yeah, it's tough to describe one's own work in the way you've laid it out. But I just want to also point out, because of you mentioned the Bihari connection, that I've actually, unfortunately, not done anything in Bihar, and I feel sad about that. But I would love to at some point. Bihar has 130 million population. Just for people to know on this call, 130 million people in one state. It is also the youngest state in India. So the average population of Bihar is 20 years old. 20 years old is the average population. So when people say India's average age is young, and I think the number is somewhere in the high 20s or early 30s, I've forgotten. Bihar is even younger than the rest of the country. I won't go into some of the macroeconomic parameters in Bihar, but it is very marginalized as a state as far as India is concerned. And I think if you're going to solve for India, we have to solve for Bihar someday. But coming back to your question, one of the ways in which I have approached my work in education, which has largely been in higher education, was that I was very inspired by my education in the US, where I felt that even in private institutions, privately funded, philanthropically funded institutions, there was a lot of emphasis in making sure that admissions were needs blind and there was adequate financial aid available to make sure that even the person with the least means and the highest need was able to get financial aid to study at that university. And this needs blind, full need financial aid model left a very deep impact on me when I came to the US, because at that time in India, generally the needs blind, full need admissions was only there in the government-owned public institutions, which are very famous, like the IITs and so on. But in the private institutions, there was a general impression that private initiatives were only about profit and making a commercial gain from education, where there was obviously a large supply-demand gap. So if you set up a school, you set up a college, you were generally branded as somebody who was interested in making money from education and not really imparting a high-quality education. And that is still true in general, by the way. People think a little bit more positively about K-12 schools, but certainly in higher education, I'm sorry about that. Certainly in higher education, they assume that if you're setting up a university or a college, that you're really interested in making money. So coming back to what we have done, and I don't want to say I have done, because in each of the projects, many people are involved. The first thing we said was that you have to be very clear about being purely non-profit and actually being non-profit, and not being interested in creating a commercial surplus and, a huge empire of educational institutions, which a number of people have done. And to ensure that the institutions that I've set up, whether it's ISB, Ashoka, Vedika, Naropa, have all been funded by what I call collective philanthropy. There's a very well-known model in the US, but in the US established universities, alumni are naturally available to contribute. So the question becomes, how do you start a new institution when you don't have alumni? And how do you motivate people who have many other causes to give to your cause? And that's one area that we've been very successful. I can talk more about that later. But tapping into philanthropic funding and also creating a shared collective philanthropy and shared governance model where you have a lot of people involved in the running and the setting up of the institution and give them collective ownership, so that one family or one individual or one institution doesn't dominate, has been a big part of how you cater to the marginalized, which I'm coming to in a minute. The next thing would be then to have a model where, while you cater to the last student, you do make sure that you are giving them the highest quality as well. Sometimes a lot of institutions get set up where people say, listen, I'm going to set it up in a remote area, and even if it's not great quality, it's okay, because at least I'm providing something to people who need it. Our approach has always been to say, no, even the last student deserves the best quality. And how do you enable that has really driven a lot of the work that I've been doing. And the last thing I would say is then you say, listen, if it is the best quality, a lot of people will come in who can afford that education, but a lot of people will not be able to afford that education and will get further marginalized. And you'll set up another elite, expensive institution. To give you an extreme example, Ashoka University's annual fee in India is about 10, 11 lakhs, and a 4-year program ends up costing about 40 lakhs. Which is about $50,000 at current exchange rate for a 4-year program. Now, it's much lower than a quality education in the US, but it's still very expensive for India. Most people wouldn't be able to afford it. A typical civil servant in India, an IS officer or an army officer, would not be able to send their children to Ashoka. But what we've done is we've there created this, through the collective philanthropy model, we've agreed that we will have a needs blind and a full need financial aid model. So more than 50% of all our students are on some form of scholarship. 20% of all students at Ashoka are on a free ship, which means that it's free tuition. And about 5-10% of students are actually on a complete free education, including their room and board. And in fact, in some cases, we actually give them a stipend because they don't even have the money to buy tea or coffee on campus. So we've created this very heavily scholarship and needs blind and full need financial aid model in all these institutions, so that no one who can get in, can deserve to get in, suffers from their economic background or lack of resources. And this model has worked really well, both at ISB and at Ashoka. And at several other programs like the Vedika Scholars Program or the Naropa program, which I've built. And I think that's, to me, that's a very powerful way to get the best quality education to the folks who are at the last mile. I mean, again, you can, in the extreme case, look at, say, the Shivnadar Foundation that has built schools which are completely free. And what they do is they go to the most marginalized students in the state of UP. They pick them up at grade 5. So obviously, if you have a lot of resources, you can do that. And you can make it completely free. You could argue that Ashoka could be completely free, or any of these programs like Naropa or Vedika could be completely free. But then you have to raise a lot more money. And why? So in this case, what you've done is you've funded it through the fee-paying students, those who can afford to pay, plus philanthropic funding for scholarships, and use that as a model to reach out to as many people as you can. I'll stop there because that sort of gives you a gist of how we think about the model with which you can make this happen for at least a small number of people. I don't think we've reached out to too many people. It's a small difference that one is making.
No, I think you bring such a good point about the philanthropic work in creating more and more institutes and doing the work at a larger scale, reaching out to a larger group and doing it collectively. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that is the way to go when, in a country like India, definitely will be very supportive of giving strength to the entire education system. So definitely it's a well worth time spent in making it happen. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the Naropa program uh, that you have, you mentioned earlier. Why Naropa and why in Ladakh uh, is the question for you.
Yeah, so I mean, since you brought up this issue of uh, you know marginalized communities, or Ladakh faces that on multiple dimensions. So one is that given its unique location, there's a very strong uh, sense of cultural erosion happening in Ladakh. It's a very special region for India. Uh, the of course, a mix of religions, but very strategically located on the border with Tibet, uh, and actually a seat of Buddhism from the ancient times. While Buddhism went all over the world, along the Himalayan foothills, Buddhism has actually thrived, and this is the ancient Indian form of Buddhism that is still preserved. There's the Drukpa sect is very active in that area, and the so but what has happened is the lack of educational institutions and the lack of quality institutions. A lot of the Ladakhis have been leaving Ladakh, so there's been, if you will, tremendous drain from that region. People get stuck where they go, they don't come back. And a lot of non-Ladakhis moving in, which is not necessarily bad, but the preservation of the local culture and practices is just suffering. Whether it is agriculture, which is taking a back seat, and tourism and hospitality starting to dominate, or it is the lack of employment opportunities, all of that is leading to a major cultural erosion in the region. Secondly, there's, like I said, the core reason is an educational gap and youth unemployment, which is a problem across India, but certainly in these remote regions. And then there's an environmental issue as well, with the influx of many more tourists coming in and some bit of industrialization. It's now a union territory of its own, as you know. There's also environmental degradation that is a real danger, which is a danger for the whole country if that area gets degraded. So to fill this gap, if you will, or fill this need, we started the Naropa program. And we've run 4 batches of the Naropa program. Right now, we have taken a year's hiatus to support some of the initiatives that the Naropa Fellows have started. It's called the Naropa Fellowship Program. We select Ladakhis and people from the Himalayan region, or people committed to work in the Himalayan region, for a 1-year full-time program where we put them through a multidisciplinary curriculum taught by some of the best faculty from around the world. People fly in to teach these Naropa Fellows. We have had, I think we've had some 400 fellows so far. 230 fellows so far, not 400, 230 fellows so far. And they get a lot of mentorship and coaching throughout the year on how to start a new enterprise, a new business. So the focus is on entrepreneurship. The multidisciplinary curriculum opens their minds and helps them understand possibilities and opportunities and challenges of working in the region. So broadens their perspective. The mentoring and coaching helps them understand what does it take to set up something from scratch and do it in a sustainable manner, raise funding, think about business models, hiring people, and so on. And the third aspect is that they start working on their startup idea very soon after they come in there, and they start building their business, as it were. So far, we have created almost 100 projects which are in different stages. Several of those projects have actually ended up in businesses that have sustained or have been funded. These are small businesses. So if you, for example, eat fresh Himalayan trout in Mumbai or Bangalore restaurant, it's actually supplied by Zarin, which is a startup started by the Naropa Fellows, who work with the local farmers to encourage fisheries and Himalayan trout. And then there are the businesses are very environmentally friendly and green businesses. So there is a business called Siachen Naturals that really works with local farmers and sustainable farming to look out. This is after the famous Siachen Glacier, which focuses on, which features in a lot of our conflict with Pakistan. And many other businesses like that, both B2B, B2C. There are all women businesses. There's a business called Nima Goose Goose. So if you came to my office, you would get very high quality barley tea that is made by this all women team that makes teas and jams and other food stuff. So multiple interesting businesses. Some of them have been funded by the Ritesh Agarwal, who himself comes from a small town and wants to fund entrepreneurs in small towns. So he's by now funded, I think, 8 businesses, Jess, if I'm right. In fact, recently he took 3 of those businesses to London because there was a big entrepreneurship conference there to highlight the work that they've done. So it's quite remarkable that even within 4 years, these 200, it's only 230 students, but the Naropa Fellowship has become a big deal in that region. People can see the impact. The local folks are very encouraged by the fact that they can see possibilities which they didn't see before. And of course, the fact that the young people, a lot of these people go out, study in the rest of India, in a Bangalore or a Pune, which are sort of education hubs, and are now coming back to see that there are opportunities that they can engage with in their own communities, in their own region. And these are very committed young men and women. About half the class is women, which is also nice to see. I think about 42%, I shouldn't overstate, but I think 42% of the class has been women. So it's wonderful to see the kind of impact you can have in a very short period of time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that information and all that's happening with the Naropa Foundation and the scholarship and the change in it is bringing in the region. So that is really nice, and I see a lot more people joining in. So with the last, I know you've written many books, and your book Learn, Don't Study definitely has a big impact on the education system overall, right? And you talk about, in my last conversation, a lot about the project based learning and really doing things through, even in your own life you drew experiences from that. So is there anything more that's in your mind, or do you feel like how does this fit in the current educational system? And after answering that, I think I'm going to let our audience join the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote the book, but things are changing so fast in the world that soon I think the book will be also outdated. But the simple tenet of the book is that the more I work with young people in India, I feel that we actually don't need to educate them. We don't need to give them too many inputs. Young people in India are very driven and very ambitious, most people. And you just need to guide them. You just need to give them access to opportunities. You need them to understand that there are actually infinite opportunities available to them relative to where we were. And honestly, that's true today. I thought that I lived in a lucky generation where after the 1991 reforms, having lived in the US, I was able to come back to India and build a career and do multiple interesting things. But I have to tell you that suddenly I now find that where India is, especially with what's going on in China and with the global economy, that we are genuinely looking like a great run as a country for the next 20, 30 years. And the kinds of opportunities that are opening up for young people are amazing. However, when young people are growing up, their parents, their teachers don't have this sense of opportunity. So they are still forcing them to do things because that's the environment they grew up in. And they're saying, nay, nay, you should do this only, or, you must study for this only. Or if you do this, then this will happen. Well, the other complication is jobs and industries and careers are changing so fast that you don't even know what you educate people for, the kind of jobs that are coming up, right? Especially with all the talk of generative AI and so on. And I'm not suggesting that it's going to disrupt the world, but it is in some ways going to change a lot of things. People in education systems can't really figure out what is the right subjects to teach to prepare people for the future. It's impossible to predict. Even if you look at people in my generation, I studied metallurgical engineering at IIT, but I never did any metallurgy. I did all kinds of other things. So I wanted to break this mindset in parents and young people that I need to study this to become that, because one, you don't know what you'll become. It's by definition, it's impossible to predict what you'll become. So how can you even work backwards and say, this is what I need to study? And I think we also need to let people understand that there's actually tremendous opportunity. Go out, try new things. Don't be thinking in a constrained environment. Think of an opportunity-rich environment and what you can do. And this is a lucky break for us as a country, given where we are. Now, I don't want to overstate the case. We have enough young people who don't have those opportunities, and we need to help them also. And that gets back to the point you were making about helping and doing work with the marginalized communities. I think that is still very necessary and important. But equally, the reason I wrote the book was I felt like we were not preparing young people for the future that is coming for them. And people needed to understand how to think about it. That's what the book does. And I think we all need to be able to communicate that to young people and their parents and teachers today.
Yeah, so well said. I feel like, today we are in the middle of a science fiction novel or a book movie, where in the field of education, things that's so rapidly changing, or with, like you alluded to, the AI and the chat GPT and everything else coming our way. I think uh, it's they barely figured out how to use the online system and get their act together in terms of teaching. And now there's chat GPT and all the other things. So it is going to be quite interesting. I think I was listening to a podcast where Salman Khan, not the actor, the one educator in the Bay Area, was talking a lot
Yeah.
about, there was his podcast where he shares his a positive attitude towards the changes in the education system with AI, and I'm on the positive end too. I feel like we're at a very exciting curve of, like you said, we don't know all the changes that are coming our way, but I think with a positive mindset and a positive attitude, we will be able to channelize it in the right way. So, lot more to come, lot more to say. But let's hear from our audience now. So, the way I want to do, there's a very nice group here. So, couple of things. It'll help if you can raise your hand. That way I know who's there, or if you have a burning comment. And I will invite Prakash Agarwal if he has anything to add before we open it to the whole public. And Prakash Agarwal is the president for Indians for Collective Action. Please, Prakash.
Oh, hi, Namita. Hi, Pramath. Good to see you. And I do want to tell the audience here that I had the opportunity to go to Ladakh on his invitation and visit Naropa Foundation and interact with the fellows there. And those 2-3 days I spent there was really, really remarkable, and how some of these things are done. I also had the opportunity to visit Ashoka, and there I interacted with the faculty as well as the students. And I mean, again, I was totally overwhelmed by how well Ashoka University is founded, organized, and being run. I could not imagine a university of that caliber could exist in India. So my hats off to you, Pramath, for getting that thing done.
Thank you.
So those are some of the comments I wanted to make, Namita, and then if there's any question from the audience towards ICA or towards me, I'll be happy to take that.
Absolutely. We have board members here, so I'll field the question accordingly. So one thing I request, we have more than 31 participants. So, just unmute and ask. Otherwise, I will start calling upon people. I like to do that too. I know we have many educators here, so come on.
Well, while you're waiting, the question I have for you, Pramath, is how could people living here sponsor a student at Ashoka or somewhere else?
Yeah, all these universities are able to, one, accept foreign funding, which will be a factor, as you know, in the donation philanthropy from the US. But we all have teams that collect scholarships and or actively look for scholarships for funding students. So yeah, it's easy to do that. Depending on what you want to focus on, people often have preferences of what type of student they want to support, maybe a female student or a student from Bihar or student studying a particular subject. So like in other universities in the United States, those systems exist in India as well to offer scholarships to students. And those are true for most universities now.
So somewhere on your, let's say, Ashoka website, people can go there and identify who they should get in touch with. Correct?
Okay, now you've put me on the spot. I don't know if there's a fundraise or a donate thing on this website, but somebody would have to reach out to one of us to let us know that they are interested, and then the development office will reach out to them.
Okay.
But that's a good point. I don't know if we have a donate button. We should put one.
Prakash, I had a question for you. Did you not mentor some of the Naropa people?
I did actually. So as I met, some of those fellows, I got involved mentoring 3 of those. One came very close to getting funding and all of that. So currently, I'm not involved with any of them. But yes, I did interact with the 3 different companies actually. Okay. And one of the company which Pramath did not mention is a Ladakhi beer, okay, which really tastes good. And if you go to India, you should try that.
Yeah, they were one of the ones that was funded by Ritesh and went to London. Again, I think that's also Jasleen, an all-women's team. By the way, I have Jasleen Aumi with me here, who has both a Bihar and a Ladakh connection. Her husband is an IS officer from the Bihar cadre, and she runs the program, the Naropa Fellowship Program.
Welcome, Jasleen.
Thank you. Yes, Pramath, it's
yes, they are doing some research on the preservative and the and being able to preserve them.
Also getting their license, alcohol license and all. They're in that stage right now. All women's team. Yes.
Perfect.
So how do we contribute to Harappa? I'm sorry, Naropa. I know that you're taking a hiatus, but does that preclude us from contributing?
No, so there's 2 ways to contribute. One is to contribute towards one of these businesses because they need funding and they need nurturing, and they are very modest businesses, so they don't need large amounts of money. Most of them are looking for single-digit lakhs, so 10 lakhs, which would be like $15,000, I think, is 10 lakhs today, or $12,000. So they're looking for $10,000, $12,000, which will keep them going for multiple years. And they're very modest people. They don't overspend. They manage their resources well. The other is to fund the fellowship program itself.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, so the other is to fund the fellowship program. We are in a fundraising mode for that fellowship program because the Buddhist sect that used to support us has had some challenges post-COVID, and a lot of their funding has gone into supporting some of the local communities. So we have a budget that we are raising towards so that we can restart this program. And we are looking for a total of about $200,000 because with about $200,000, we can run 1 year of the fellowship. So we are looking to raise about that kind of money to restart the program and then continue that over the next few years.
Actually, to the audience who are here, if you do want to donate to this program, Naropa, you can donate through ICA. Just write your check or send your money and say that this is for Naropa, and we'll be gladly transfer that funds to Naropa.
Yeah, as a cause of all the things that I do, this has been the most deeply satisfying because this is a region that is very challenged in multiple ways and is really lacking in resources, particularly around educational programs and just exposure to high quality stuff. And you can therefore see that the moment you expose them to a guy like Prakash, suddenly 3 businesses will be born. And so it's not just about the money is great, but I think all of you could personally contribute. If you come to India, we can arrange for you to go to Leh Ladakh. Of course, it's a beautiful part of the world. Most people don't realize that. It's quite unique in terms of its beauty and lots of interesting stuff to do there. But I think engaging with this group of people is very, very deeply satisfying, and you can actually see the impact immediately.
Do you have a FCRA?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Abhay Bhushan. And yeah, my question for you is, how have you found, one thing I completely agree with you, that youth of India is one of the strengths in the 21st century. India is one of the youngest countries with a very large young population. And that is going to be a big factor in India competing on the global front, as well as the development of India. I think the second factor is internet, which I think may have leveled the playing field. How are you using the internet in both in Naropa and in Ashoka University to help improve the access of the students or the fellows?
So the digitalization is a big factor, Abhay, and you're absolutely right. We use the internet primarily to bring in faculty and experts that people otherwise would not be able to access. So that's the main, it's in giving them exposure to inspirational teachers, to experts, to role models, to people who can mentor, advise, and coach them. In fact, in Ladakh, this is most important. In fact, when we started the program, getting just internet access at that time was very difficult. It still can sometimes be a challenge, but I think it's improved a lot. But the internet has been a real lifeline for the Naropa program, and especially to remain connected with the different enterprises that have been created. By the way, a lot of the fellows, after they complete the program, go and work in their own home communities and rural areas. So they're certainly very remote. So staying connected through the internet has been really a lifeline. At Ashoka, what we've done is, Ashoka is a much more traditional university. For our students, I don't think access to the internet matters so much because it is a physically contained campus and the faculty are all there and so on, like a traditional model. But what we are doing is we've launched something called Ashoka X. And through Ashoka X, we are making the teachings of our very high quality faculty available to many, many more people than can come into the Ashoka campus or get admitted to Ashoka. both at the school level and at the college and beyond. So for example, to give you two examples, we run this Horizons program for kids in class 9 to 12 in schools. And they are getting exposure to some of our best faculty, teaching them things like history and astrophysics and biology and math and computer science, which is very popular. And we use online to reach out to those folks. This includes reaching out to people who come from backgrounds that are not that well-to-do or just not in the cities, and we offer scholarships for them to attend these online courses. We also offer courses for adults like you and me, but to anybody who wants to, and there's some very interesting courses that have never before been offered in India. So for example, we ran a series of lectures on 75 years of India's independence that was extremely well subscribed by some of the best names from across the world. So what online allows us to do is have a platform where, using the Ashoka name, we can get some of the best faculty from around the world, as well as students from around the world, to focus on an issue that hitherto has not been taught or covered, even in the Ashoka physical campus. And so that's also very exciting. And we are right now running a program in partnership with data.org, which is a Rockefeller Foundation funded organization. That is a fully funded program where they are teaching data science to people working in the social sector. So you have to be working in a social sector NGO. You apply for this program. It's a 6-month program, free, funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and data.org, but delivered entirely by Ashoka University to anyone, anywhere in the country. So yeah, I think digitalization has helped a lot. On your first point about the youth, though, I think we have a big problem. What we call the demographic dividend is indeed a demographic dividend, but we are not investing enough in terms of numbers. And that's the big challenge with youth in India. One, we are not creating enough jobs for these young people. And so however much you educate them, the opportunities are just not there. And I think that's why growing the country from a overall macroeconomic perspective, investing in manufacturing, which is where the bulk of the jobs will get created, is extremely important. And then, even though we are talking about quality education here, the initiatives that we are talking about are just a spray in the ocean. And across the board, I don't think we are doing enough. Right from early childhood education, which has to do with foundational literacy and numeracy, which now the government has kind of woken up to secondary education, where there's a lot of drop-offs, to vocational education, where we are not being able to train people for the right jobs, to college education, where our enrollment is still only about 25% of the young population. And still we are not able to get them enough jobs. So I think there is a whole set of issues along the entire chain of different cohorts and age groups that need to be really fixed, because while the numbers are there, the quality is just not there, and the quantity of demand in terms of jobs and supply of jobs is not there. Yes, I think Nirupama.
I had a question. My name is Nirupama. This is a fascinating conversation. I work in dance education in the US. I'm a Bharatanatyam dancer and a writer. And the India that I grew up in, the smart people studied science and math. The smart people did not go to study the liberal arts, which has obviously changed. I was very fascinated by your comment that the youth have moved on into this new space, and the parents and the teachers are still kind of caught up in the India that they grew up in, where they find a certain stability which comes with jobs in science and math, right? And I'm wondering whether these highly qualified people in the liberal arts that you train through your various programs, through the fellowship program and all of this, whether there is a brain drain from India like we saw in the sciences a few decades ago, or whether they're able to continue to work in India through either private organizations which can support that kind of liberal arts thinking, which is so important very vital to a country, or whether they take up social entrepreneurship and found or join other NGOs that do this kind of work. I was just wondering, after the education, how are the youth dealing with this?
So it's a very pertinent question, but the answer is that I think the youth who come out with this kind of education, Nirupama, the one thing that is different about these youth is that they are much more clued in to the real problems of the world. And this is the point I was making earlier about my book, that once they become aware, then they naturally start engaging. You don't have to preach to them to leave the world a better place or go do something for your community, because they see the problems. They understand now. They are taught in the classroom. And when you study history and sociology and political science and philosophy and so on, and get into interdisciplinary fields like environment, archaeology, and so on, you then start to see and development economics and so on. You start to see that these are real problems. And then you, as a human being, you start responding to it, because you can't ignore it. And there's also exposure in other ways. You get exposed to role models and people who are working in the sector. You have alumni who've been working in the sector. So to your point, I find that there's a much greater awareness of problems. And while some people in the near term may still go and get a corporate job or want to make money, that seed, that plant of saying, listen, you are, just by coming here now, however, wherever you may have come from, you are very privileged. And it's almost your duty to give back. It's almost an obligation that you have, given that you are so privileged, that you cannot not at some point in your career give back in whatever way possible. So I think that sensibility, I think all our graduates have. And I think that's been very powerful for me personally to watch, because the generation, at least we grew up in, we saw our parents giving away, doing a lot, but they almost encouraged us to go and be and do whatever we needed to do. They said, somebody else will solve the world's problems. You go thrive and shine. So I think that shift is happening. Interestingly, the people who come from the marginalized backgrounds are the ones who are most committed to going back. I had always thought that, you give people a leg up and then they'll want to go and work in investment banking or want to go abroad. I'm finding that a lot of people who come from rural communities actually want to go back. They don't care too much about making money and, earning a lot or generating wealth. Of course they do. They want to look after their family and so on. But now a lot more NGO jobs are available that pay you enough that you can actually look after yourself and your family well. I can give you a quick example. We had this woman from Tamil Nadu who was the daughter of a farmer whose two sons were actually security guards in Chennai. The older daughter was married off as the only way for her to go forward. And she got into Ashoka, and there was a lot of resistance from the family to even send her to college. The local district collector intervened and made sure that she gave her an award and put a big news in the newspaper about how brilliant this girl was. And the parents got convinced. They sent her to Ashoka, where she studied a 4-year program in biology, working on very advanced research on gene sequencing with our professors, and did extremely well. Her GPA was 3.6 or 3.8 or something like that. I was encouraging her to go abroad, and I said, listen, you'll get a job anywhere, and you should go do a PhD. And she said, no, right now I want to go back and work in my community. And in fact, she's not using her biology experience, but she's working for the JPAL, the Jameel Poverty Action Lab at MIT, has an operation in Chennai where they're working with rural projects. So she's working back there. She was very clear that she wanted a job, but she wanted an impact-oriented job, that she wanted to make a certain amount of money because she wanted to look after her parents. And she was able to meet all those requirements. So I do think that there's a much greater sensibility. And I also think that recruiters are valuing this sensibility too. It may not be as widespread as you and I would like it to be, because it's a change that is taking place. I certainly see that in North America and even in Europe, particularly in England. It's not only STEM graduates who are hired into jobs. Anybody can get into any job. I think that's starting to happen here. And that sensibility is coming in the recruiters as well. So I think that change is coming and it's happening. And that's why you see a lot more talk of multidisciplinary education. Our new education policy talks about that. Liberal arts colleges like Flame and Kriya and Ahmedabad University and so on. So I see a substantial shift coming.
Thank you for the work. Thank you for the work that all of you do, and thank you for that example, because I come from Tamil Nadu, and I think I'll sleep with a smile on my face today. Thank you so much.
If I could add more, Pramath, most of your faculty at Ashoka are the people from US and UK. They have moved to India, right?
A lot of them, yes. There are people like, people
we have a hand raise. I don't want to miss the hand raise.
No, Shlok has a hand up. And I also wanted to add, Prakash, that one of the interesting things in the liberal arts, to Nirupama's point, is that a lot of the liberal arts faculty are actually moving from other parts of the world. We have a lot of white Americans teaching at Ashoka.
That's right. Yeah.
Because the liberal arts jobs are actually on the decline in the US. So sometimes we get criticism that why do you need a white American teaching philosophy at Ashoka? But obviously we are not going by the color of people's skin or nationality, but saying, listen, this is a great Sanskritist, and if he wants to be at Ashoka, why not?
Look, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Hello, Dr. Sinha, and thanks for the talk today. I think I know, as Namita, I think, brought up AI earlier, means one thing I feel is like maybe AI can help us identify individual students' needs, and maybe we can help tailor some methods to teach them on an individual basis. But we just wanted to know your thoughts on how AI can impact, I think, our traditional education model, and what do you see in the next 5 to 10 years?
See, I think that multiple things are going to happen, and I don't have a well thought through answer for you. But I will say the first thing is that the way students and teachers will engage with education will change completely. And I can give you a small example of that. So I run an online educational initiative called Harappa. So imagine that at Harappa, I have a program for young managers. It trains them on problem solving, critical thinking, communication, teamwork, how to mentor and coach a team member, and so on. One of the things that we teach them there is how to receive and how to give feedback as part of developing people and developing yourself. Now, this program is, about 30 hours of content, which is videos, slides, reading material, assessments, and so on. Now, suppose you do this program and you complete it. Today, what we've done using generative AI is that you did this program 2 months ago. Today, you have a meeting with your manager. You want to ask your manager has asked to give him or her some feedback. This is your boss you're giving feedback to. Now, you remember that Harappa course taught me something about feedback. What you can actually do is type in a question saying, I have a meeting with my manager today who's asked me to give him feedback. I'm feeling a bit concerned that I may not be prepared. How best should I prepare to give feedback to my manager? And what this generative AI program does is actually, it has all the content that I've taught in that 30 hours. And it can go in there and pull out the key points that I need to know to give feedback to my manager. It's almost magical, by the way. I mean, I did a PhD in robotics 30 years ago. So I know what AI is capable of and what AI was 30 years ago. And I also know the content that I've created for the program that I have. But the ability to be able to answer that question so precisely and so authentically, it's not garbage in, garbage out like a lot of AI questions could be, because it's learned my content, only that part of my content. More interestingly, you can ask the question in English, in a combination of Hindi and English, and you will get an answer. And most importantly, you can actually type your question in Hindi in Devanagari script, and you'll get an answer in Devanagari script, whereas all my content is in English. And I kid you not, this is available on my platform right now. If you want to subscribe to Harappa's Thriversity, it's just 1,500 rupees of 140 hours of content. You can go there and you can ask this question and you'll get an answer. So it's incredible what support students will have and how faculty will have to change what they teach and how they teach it. Because even on their own content, students don't even have to go back and look at their notes. They can just ask on the LMS, what did Prakash tell me about semiconductors? And boom, it'll be available to them. So I think the way you teach and learn is going to fundamentally change. And I think the point that Salman Khan made to what Namita was saying was really that actually it's an exciting opportunity. It's almost as I often offer people the analogy of the book. The book in its current form, the pages bound with printing on both sides, is called the codex, right? The technical name for that form of knowledge is codex. Earlier, it was papyrus and scrolls, and then somebody came up with this invention of the book. What you're seeing is the creation of almost a new codex of the new book, where it doesn't need to be pages and you don't need to answer questions in the back and so on. So I think that's the fundamental shift that's happening in education, in the way it is delivered and learned. And I don't think we have to see it as a threat at all, but an amazing opportunity for us to learn better. But I also think that it's extremely important for people to understand what AI cannot do and what some of the perils are of AI. Because at least what ChatGPT now does is it says, listen, I don't have full context, so I can't answer this question. But sometimes you can actually get garbage in and garbage out, as you can do from the old models of correlation and linear regression that we used to do in a rudimentary form of AI many years ago. So I think getting young people to understand what the limitations are, and that, and of course the ethics and the privacy issues associated with AI become equally important, is where I think the focus will have to shift. But I certainly don't believe that we are going to die as a human race because everything is going to be taken over by AI and robots. I think there's going to be a lot for us to do, and huge opportunities for transforming education.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think, the only thing I fear is like the creativity and critical thinking hopefully doesn't die with this, because, for example, like these days, like songwriters are asking ChatGPT to come up with the lyrics of a song.
Yes,
so I think,
I know.
Right. So, so hopefully, but I
think creativity has always taken a little bit of a hit during these technological innovations in the near term. But I think just the human endeavor and the human brain is so powerful that we'll find new ways of being creative. But yes, I don't mean to be an authority on the subject. That's just my view.
Yeah, no, I was talking to my sister who's in the movie business, and the amount of time that they spend on editing is just like, for any one of us who does editing can relate to that, and Shlok himself does it. It's huge and humongous. And she said, if that can get reduced, then imagine the time that person has towards something else. So I think there will always be those wins and losses, and I think it's up to the human nature to find out what else can you do with that time then. So it'll be amazing to see how we roll.
I think also the truth is that if we can use this to solve for some of the inequity in the world,
yeah,
then there's a lot to be done.
Absolutely.
So we started about talking about Bihar and the 130 million people and the average age of 20. I mean, those guys don't get a quality education. Can we use generative AI and the kind of things I'm talking about to really educate people who are marginalized without having to spend all the money that is required today to set up a campus and raise philanthropic dollars and so on? So I do think that there's going to be a lot of work required to use some of these technologies to solve some of the larger problems, whether it's climate, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's poverty. And I think that's where the opportunities are going to get created.
We have a comment from Swati. Swati, you want to unmute? Or if, she says, do you think...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I can. Hello, Dr. Sinha. So I think that continuing on the question that Shlok asked, I was just wondering if, we are now better understanding what should be the limitations or kind of conscious way of using AI in different applications, and they have their own needs. Each application comes with its own requirements and needs. So setting these standards and principles for responsible AI, I think you already mentioned about ethics and privacy. This is something that educators can contribute to when it comes down to setting standards for responsible AI in different domains. And eventually it should be part of the curriculum, because as students graduate and they go into the workforce, they should be aware of these kind of responsibilities as they enter the workforce.
Absolutely. I think today when we say critical thinking or responsible citizenship is what liberal arts education, for example, teaches you. I think how to use AI in the right way is going to become part of that education. It's going to get mainstreamed. Today, you can't have a economics program without talking about development or poverty or public health. I think similarly, you will start talking about public AI just as you talk about public health. And I think that time is almost here. I think again, to give you an example, I was at Cambridge University recently, and we do some work with them at Ashoka, where we have a Center for Digitization and Society, which actually has started to look at some of these issues. And equally at Cambridge, there's a Center for Computer Ethics. And they were telling me that as a university, they are saying that, listen, as computer scientists, it's almost too hard for us to invest the kind of money that the big companies like Google and Microsoft and others are going to put into the improvements and the development of AI and algorithms. We almost feel like we have to give up that being in that race. But what they are not going to do, and which only we can do as a university, is really focus on the issues of ethics and privacy and the right kind of responsible use, because of the multidisciplinary approach, because of having the philosophers who've been discussing ethics for centuries combined with the computer scientists to say, what is the right answer? And interestingly, the reason they are collaborating with us at Ashoka is they're saying, what lessons can we draw from Hindu and Indian philosophy and Indian way of looking at ethics that'll help us resolve some of these issues around responsible AI? So you're absolutely right. I think educational institutions have a lot to contribute, because at the end of the day, educational institutions are where true interdisciplinary thinking happens, because you have people from different disciplines under one roof, and they are able to interact and solve some of these problems that essentially require people to have come from different backgrounds.
Thank you for that question. I think Mayu, you had a comment to.
Yeah, and I think
think
it was almost like she was asking the question while I was answering. Absolutely, please go ahead. But I agree that even in biosciences and life sciences, the same issue comes up.
No, is it? I just wanted your insight that obviously you guys must have thought of incorporating some interdisciplinary, for archaeology, for ecology, environment. Some parts of science does come in, but is it more expensive to include the life sciences in the syllabus? Or, I'm sure it's more investment intensive to add
It
to
is.
the university's syllabus. So maybe that's a
Yes,
challenge.
it is. It is a challenge, and at least at Ashoka, we've solved for it by doing this in stages. So we started with, liberal arts does include natural sciences as well. So it does include physics, chemistry, biology, and math and computer science. But what we did was we started with the humanities and social sciences and with math and computer science, because that actually didn't require that much investment.
Correct.
But we layered in physics, chemistry, and biology over time. And our biology program is about 4 years old. But now we are investing a lot. As a university, we progressed a lot. And so we are able to raise more money. And now that we are able to raise money, get grants, we've been actually funded by an Indian American, Ashok Trivedi, who has actually contributed to our Trivedi School of Biosciences. And the Trivedi School is actually a very multidisciplinary center. Probably the only one of its kind where biology research is going to be done in conjunction with the historians, the archaeologists, the sociologists. But it is expensive, you're right, because you get into gene sequencing and studying DNA and so on. But the only last thing I will say is that you have to do it intelligently, because you can do a lot of partnerships.
Exactly.
So
And
for
Delhi
example,
has so many of those
exactly,
facilities.
right.
Yes.
So we, for example, right next to us have an extension campus of IIT Delhi, where thanks to all the government funding they get, they've put in a lot of equipment in this extension campus. By design, they put a lot of their high-end equipment, which doesn't have too much traffic. Very few people use it in this campus because it's a little bit remote from the main campus. But it serves our purpose very well because it's right next to us.
Yes.
And being a public institution, one good thing about public institutions and the way Indian education is organized is that they have almost an obligation to help connect to private institutions and to do collaboration. So we have access to all those wonderful facilities without having to buy and invest in those ourselves.
Thank you for that.
So there's collaboration happening across institutions in India now, which didn't happen before.
So, I have a group working out of a lab in Baroda. So what we do is we kind of do a model where either if internships are required or if students want to take 6 months, if you guys include that as part of credits in their master's program, or then we would be able to kind of give them bring them into Baroda and support them, give them lab facilities, and maybe help publish, or whatever, if they are interested.
We'd love to.
So that's something I just thought of talking to you about. Yeah. Because we already
should, because now
on campus.
Yes, and the additional thing, Mayura, is that now Mayu, is that the new education policy requires a 4-year program, and the last year they have to do some research.
So they have added that part, and made it mandatory.
So a lot of institutions are struggling with that, because you can't suddenly now have research for all your undergrads in the 4th year.
No, you cannot.
So they will be looking for these types of partnerships, including us.
Correct.
Wonderful. I'm looking at my watch. It is 9:43. So I know the conversation is very interesting and everybody would love to continue talking to Pramath and hearing from Jasleen too. But I know they have to eat breakfast, or maybe it's coming closer to lunchtime. I don't know. But yeah, and others have a working night tomorrow. So I appreciate everybody staying here. Unless I'm going to have Reshma pitch in, as she has most connections with Pramath, being the younger brother. And we really enjoyed the conversation last time Pramath was there at Reshma's place. And Reshma, do you want to add anything before we say goodbye for tonight?
No, I'm just so happy to have so many people attend this call and enjoyed how we spanned from Naropa to Ashoka and then got into AI and all the different things. And then Mayu talking about the biosciences. So it just makes me feel good that ICA was able to do this. And of course, thank Pramath for scheduling us, and it was I mean, you agreed immediately, and I wanted to thank you for that because I know how busy you can be. So thank you. Good night to everyone. I think we are done with the questions, it looks like, so we can let the team go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hopefully our paths will cross again as I plan my trip to India. So thank you again, and I look forward to connecting.
Thank you. And